Welcome everyone to the Rural City of Wangaratta's Community Spotlight event. This year we're going to be doing things a little bit differently with the Community Spotlight. Obviously it's daytime now, we'd normally be out spotlighting in the evening. We're going to put together some footage of some animals for you for that part of it. So a bit of a background to tonight's event. I'll just be giving you a brief summary of our waterway and bushland reserves and some of the values of those, and then I'll have Andrew Snowden, our Bush Regen team leader, who'll be talking about some of the animals that you can see here and the importance of habitat for those animals. So I'll start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet tonight and all elders past and present and emerging. So yeah, today we're in Big Kaluna Park, which is one of our really pristine bushland reserves. You can see behind us here we've got some really big, large old trees. If it pans around to the right here, there's some really good mid-story and understory trees as well. Some shrubs and we've also got a good ground cover of understory as well, grasses, native grasses and other things there as well. So most of our bushland reserves are in different stages of bush regeneration. This one has been happening for a long time. And it's pretty good. Some of our other reserves are at a smaller stage of bush regeneration. The basic principles of bush regeneration is we remove all the nasty stuff, all the weeds. So in this site there would have been a lot of woody weeds. As you can see, there's not many now. We've removed all them. That's the first principle of bush regen. Get rid of the bad stuff, and then we can see what regenerates. Quite often you'll get a lot of regeneration of these wattles and some of the mid-story trees. Not a lot of native grasses usually, because most of the areas that we've been dealing with have been highly degraded. And then we'll supplementary plant mid-story and understory plants, so native grasses and other ones that don't naturally come up. Some of the issues that we have with these sites, obviously you can see the river in the background, that's the King River. This site goes underwater, so it's a very low-lying part of Wangaratta here at Big Kaluna. And this reserve can quite often be underwater for a couple of months a year. So it's very hard for Andrew and his team to get in here and do works and maintain the weed removal program that they work on. Obviously, the opposite of that, we can have a severe drought, and when I first started here in 2009, we're at the end of the millennium drought, and a lot of these reserves were in a severe state of water deficiency. So that's another thing that we have to deal with. One of the other things in these reserves, you can see the big trees around us. We've got quite a number of scar trees or Indigenous heritage cultural trees. On this site we've actually got what we believe is a birthing tree, as well as some canoe trees and other sign trees potentially as well. So we won't see those today, but yeah, they're in a lot of our reserves. Hand over to Andrew Snowden, who's our Natural Resource Management Team Leader, who will talk about some of the animals here.
Yeah, good evening everyone. As Scott was saying, I'm going to talk about some of the animals that actually live in our reserves and live around Wangaratta. This is only a small sample of some of the animals that you may see out while you're spotlighting. There's a couple of really rare animals here, and we have seen them out when we have spotlighted before. But the trick with these animals is you must be really quiet when you're out spotlighting. So I'll get straight into describing some of the animals and what they need to survive and what we've done as council to make sure these guys have got habitat and areas to live in. The first animal I'll talk about is the Squirrel Glider. This is a little marsupial glider. They live in tree hollows and they're arboreal, which means they don't like to come to the ground. They need really big trees and big hollows to survive. As you can see, they've got a gliding membrane between their wrist and their ankle, and these guys can glide up to about 90 metres from tree to tree, which is a huge big distance. They don't actually flap or anything. What they do is they climb up to the top of a big tree, they'll jump, spread out like this animal is posed here, and they can glide through the air and go and land onto another tree. They live in family groups normally, and this is about breeding season time for them about right now. As I said, they need tree hollows to survive, and unfortunately in Wangaratta, a lot of our big trees that carry these hollows have been chopped down. It takes about 100 years for a hollow in a tree to form. So you can see when the first Europeans came to Wang, we chopped down a lot of the trees here for houses and things like that, firewood. Took away a lot of homes. But in this area here in Big Kaluna, we have plenty of massive big tree hollows. But the only problem is with these hollows is that there's a lot of competition between introduced animals and our native animals to these hollows. So unfortunately, the smaller animals like the glider tend to miss out. So we actually have a program in the Rural City of Wang where we have nest boxes up along a lot of our reserves. And if you're walking around the bike tracks, you'll quite often see a green nest box up somewhere. And that's for these animals here to provide these guys a home. As I said, they are marsupials, and the mother female will give birth to about 6 young, and they're tiny babies, and they'll crawl out of mum up into the pouch, and they stay in the pouch about 3 or 4 months, and then mum will carry them around on their back. With the glider, they eat insects normally, but in the winter time when there's no insects, as you can see, this time of year we've had insects everywhere, plenty of tucker for these animals. But in the winter time, very little food for them because the insects all sort of die off. What they tend to do is climb down into wattle trees, especially silver wattle trees. These are blackwoods over here, but we do have plenty of silver wattle trees over here. There's silver wattle trees here. Climb down out of the big gum trees, land in the silver wattles, chew the bark, and the sap comes out, and that's a sugary sap. That's why they're called sugar gliders and squirrel gliders, and they lick that sap up, and that keeps them going. Next animal we have here is a Tawny Frogmouth owl. They're not actually owls. Technically they're not owls, they're actually a nightjar, but most people call them owls because once again they come out at night time. These guys are insect eaters, and you can see here they have wonderful camouflage. During the day they'll sit on a log like this, and unless you can spot one, they're very, very hard to spot during the day because they just look like a bit of broken oil. They've got wonderful camouflage. We do have these in Wangaratta. These are probably one of the more common owls or birds at night time that you will see. And they also need tree hollows, as these other animals do. When I work in some of the reserves around Wangaratta that I manage, quite often I've seen male and female frogmouth owls sitting on a branch with 3 little juveniles, and they just look like 3 little lumps or knobs on a bit of wood. Their camouflage is absolutely amazing, as you can see. And finally, the last animal I'll talk a little bit about is the barking owl. This animal is the apex predator at night time. You can see very, very much looks like a hawk, more than your owl that you may see on a Harry Potter movie. Hasn't got the round face, like most people think of owls with a big round face. This one is more a hawk owl, and that's actually what it's described as, a hawk owl. So he's the apex predator, and he will feed on these other animals here, as well as numerous other critters around town. What they do is they also nest in hollows, and they need tree hollows to breed and survive. The barking owl will sit up in a perch on a tree and scan around the area looking for lizards, mice, other birds, or possums. They'll take ringtails and brushtail possums as well, and they'll sit on a branch, scan an area looking for signs of movement. They've got wonderful eyesight. Their eyesight's about 100 times better than ours, so they've got sensational eyesight and night vision. What they do is they'll spot something, piques their attention, they focus in, they'll take off. They've got special feathers on their wings, so they're a silent glide, a bird. You know, when you've been swooped by a magpie, you can hear the swishing wings. With these guys, you can't hear that, or the animals can't hear that. Fly down, grab something on the ground, whether it's a rabbit or a mouse or a lizard or something, grab it, use its beautiful big talons here. It's got massive claws, sinks the claws into that animal, flies back up to its perch, smashes the animal a couple of times and breaks its neck or back, and then basically tears strips off from it. It sounds pretty gruesome, but it's a magnificent animal. We have them in Wang. We've got 3 or 4 pairs that we've had in Wang, and there is a pair in here that have been heard recently. Called the barking owl, obviously because they make a barking noise. They woof, 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 woof. Sounds like a dog, and I think a lot of people probably hear that noise at night in Wangaratta and think they're hearing dogs, whereas it's probably a barking owl. They are also called the screaming lady. When the first Europeans came to Australia, when they get alarmed or when they're defending their territory, they screech and squeal and scream like an old lady, which is probably not politically correct, but that's what they do. And when the first Europeans came here, they heard that noise at night and thought, what is that noise? And so they called them the screaming lady. We have undertaken surveys on these animals, and what we do is we play that noise, that screaming noise, on a tape. We have to wear actually protection because these animals really defend their territories. Once again, these are tree hollow. I love to breed in tree hollows. What happens in breeding time, the female will sit on eggs in a nest, and the poor old male has to sit outside. He's not allowed into the nest, but he has to catch all the food for the mum and feed mother while she's on the nest. Typically they have 2 or 3 little chicks, little babies, and once they grow up and start to fledge, they'll take off and find their own area. So one really key piece of habitat for all these animals is hollows in trees. Really important that we try and keep old trees with hollows, whether they're alive or dead standing. They're just as important. Even fallen timber on the ground provides habitat and food sources for particularly the barking owl, and that's why we say try and please leave fallen timber on the ground. People like to tidy up, but the bush is not tidy, and this habitat on the ground is really, really important. Fallen timber is really important habitat where the little animals can live, so the bigger animals can feed on them. Just some of the reasons some of these animals are endangered is habitat loss, obviously, but also predation. And one of our pets that we have, a cat. Cats will take these animals. You might think your pet cat, if you let your pet cat outside, no, my pet cat doesn't take animals. I just about guarantee you that your pet does catch these animals, and unfortunately once the cat gets them and bites them, they get infections and they die. So what we try to promote is keeping your pets inside at night time. It's not just the feral cats that will take these animals, your own personal little cat will take these animals as well. So really important that you try and keep your animals inside at night time. Just while we were filming down here today, we noticed this log on the ground here, which is a little bit above the ground. It actually looks like to be a feeding table perhaps, and I would surmise that a barking owl has caught a rabbit or a possum, and you can see all the fur. So the barking owl's landed here, probably stripped all the fur off the possum because they don't like to eat fur. They're after the meat and things like that. And you can see it's stripped it. There's plenty of fur here. There's not much else left because they'll eat pretty much everything. So we think this is another reason that we like to leave timber on the ground, because this is a sort of use that the timber can also have, or fallen timber can have. So
thanks for everyone for coming along tonight. It's great to catch up with everyone in this virtual world. Obviously we can't take you out spotlighting with us tonight as we normally would, but we encourage you to go out in your backyard with a strong torch, a powerful torch or a spotlight if you've got one, and see if you can see some animals in your own backyard.